That was my Sunday morning.
Yeah.
You're good.
I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. We would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather as traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. Note that Councillor Palmer is not in attendance this evening. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for December 19th, 2022 council meeting as presented. May I get a mover and a seconder?
I'll move it.
Deputy Reeve Faulkner, Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Are there any members who would like to declare pecuniary interest with regard to any items on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Public comments, opportunity for members of the public to speak to any item on business on the agenda for 2 minutes per person. Are there any members in the public who would like to speak to any item on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Consent agenda that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 5.1.1 to 5.1.2, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.3 to 5.3.5 for information. Does anybody like to pull anything? Okay, we'll carry on.
So you need a mover and a seconder for that motion.
Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Wright, Councillor Van Hitterson, all in favor? Carried. Tonight, we'd like to present service awards for some of our part-time staff who have been with us for 5 and 15 years. So it's a great honor to be able to present these awards to different ones. Sarah Caldwell.
She's at work,
Work.
but she should be here.
Julie Chester. Oh, I can't pick on her. She's went to school back around the time I did. That's a couple of decades ago. Julie Jacobs.
Julian's working too. She's working.
Working. Jamie Murray. Same. Michael Rose. I know he's here. Yeah, Michael's slowing down a little bit. He spent many years teaching fire chiefs, and we really appreciate his work doing that, and also going around visiting schools, just giving lots of education for our safety in our workplaces. So I just like to thank you for your many years of thing.
You look this way.
Oh,
Sorry,
oh.
Mike. Can you just shake his hand again and look this way? Thanks. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Brittany Weaver. Carol McPherson. Carol Phillips. I know she is here. You should know the way down these aisles by now. You brought a lot of people down. Quite often at any of our performances, she makes sure the ushers are doing their job, and we just appreciate the work that you do here. Thank you very much, Carol.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. You turned away. Sorry.
Oh.
There you go.
She's hard to get along with, eh?
1, 2, 3.
Thanks. Moira Walden? Not here?
What's Maria Wall?
Maria, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just appreciate the work that you do, Maria. I do have it right that time, Maria.
Yes.
Okay. Just thank you very much for your years of working with us. You've been here 15.
16, actually.
16,
Coming up.
awesome, great job, appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last person I have here now, a guy named Jim Saint. I've moved the nets for this guy. Well, he comes out on that Zamboni, you just be out of his way, believe you me. But I'll tell you, he can get if your tournaments gets running behind, he can gain time. I don't know how he does it, but.
No more.
No. But no, we appreciate the years that you drove the Zamboni and just the work about.
Yeah, you will not get any faster than 10 minutes.
No, he did go by the rules of the law, though. Thank you very much for your time. Next, we have a delegation from Angela McPherson and Kendra Krager about the 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee. I'd like to invite them to come to the stage and make their delegation, please. Thank you, Ange and Kendra, for coming this evening. I know a bit slippery out there, but we appreciate what you're planning on doing, and we just look forward to your presentation.
We do have it on,
Yeah, your PowerPoint is open on there if you just exit out of that one.
it's the second one I can see down there. All right, we thank you for inviting us back to council. Since the last time we have met, progress has gone forward with trying to organize for homecoming in 2024. We have established a logo. As you can see, it represents the village is marking 150 years in 2024. The town was established 5 years later, so we included that in our logo for representation as well. Family, Friends, and More Homecoming 2024 is our logo that we've developed to represent what we're moving forward for our homecoming. We have provided terms of reference as a committee that we're looking forward to developing. As mentioned, subcommittees have been determined to meet projected needs for the event, for the celebration. We've had a large community engagement that has gone underway, lots of social media engagement, and community members reaching out, and we're formally requesting to be a committee of council. Having some technical difficulties. Basically, the next couple slideshows are just the people that have invested their interest and committed to certain portions of our subcommittees. So we have the different breakdowns according to grounds, marketing, and events, and everybody that has set forth and committed their investment in certain areas. This one is the marketing, and the following is events. So we'd ask council to review our terms of reference and make a decision so we can move forward with our future plans for homecoming 2024. The date for the projected homecoming is the July 1st long weekend in 2024, so that we could end with the fireworks that are already pre-established in the town. And that concludes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Is there any questions? And I got that right, July 21st, 2024, right?
That's correct. June 28th to July 1st of 2024. I originally had it wrong in the agenda meeting that came to you, just because I was quickly putting it together. But Julie was able to correct it in this presentation for today.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Reeve?
Thank you. Through you, Reeve.
I just want to make sure that the delegation is fully aware of I would guess some restraints that the Committee of Council would put upon someone. It's committee or council is kind of a slow reacting thing, and you want something this month, and we don't really get around to it till maybe the end of the month, and it's going to be weeks between decision making, and it actually gives council the ability to allow or deny anything that would be happening, because it would have to come to council for decision making.
Yeah, we're hoping for like a liaison from the committee of council, from the council to sit with us on our subcommittees for assistance in that way. We did do a lot of investigation as to what was our best options to be a committee of council or not to be. We spoke to a lot of the previous homecomings that did them in 2022, all of which were committee of councils, and sought the reasonings why. And moving forward, we just feel that the committee of council is of our best interest for the group moving forward.
And just to follow, is there any asks of the council, of the committee to council beforehand, or?
Well, it was in our terms of reference, just what we wanted as our committee, what our grounds would be. We were hoping as the committee to determine where all the race funds would go, obviously staying within the North Huron-Wingham area for community betterment projects. But as a committee, having the ability to vote as the committee as to where those funds would be presented.
Just saying, we're going into a budget process, and now's the time to put in for any requests so they can be.
Oh, we were requesting startup funds. We had that conversation, but it was mentioned in August about the startup funds. So it's money that goes back into the town, because we would pay them back when the funds were generated. So I guess if we need to request that at this point, we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the question is whether they should put in the request. I guess it depends whether you're looking for seed money or.
Yeah, we are requesting seed money for startup. There is a lot of things that require retainers, and to move forward, we have to put the retainers in place to be able to book them, especially because it is a long weekend. Things are in hot commodities for those weekends, so like security requires retainers, facilities require retainers, entertainment requires retainers, so a lot of things at this point, in order for us to be able to secure them for the event, require a retainer moving forward.
So then, through Reef Heifer to answer the question, I guess to clarify, council's direction on that would be contingent on their decision regarding a committee of council. Right, so if you were a committee of council, the seed money would be, council controls the finances of their committees of council anyways, so you would just be paying yourself back essentially, compared to if you're not a committee of council, the request would have to come forward for seed money. You'd have to make a decision on the seed money, and then the group would pay back the township. So I guess to answer that question, it's contingent on your direction regarding their request to be a committee of council.
Other questions for the ladies here, please? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure, through you, Reeve. I'm just curious if your intent is to run any events in 2023, like other homecomings have, or if it will just start sometime in 2024.
Yeah, the Legion has approached, they would like to do a kickoff for homecoming, where it would be a mutual benefit for them and for homecoming, and then hoping to do a New Year's Eve of next New Year's, 2023, 2024, to help generate funds as well for the committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Heersen.
Thank you, Reeve. The terms of reference that you have established and the terms of reference for where we are normally working with committees of council, are they the same, or are they almost the same, or do they agree with each other?
So council, through Reeve Heffer to answer Councilor Van Harrison's question. So council has adopted a committee appointment policy that specifies what types of things are required to be in your terms of reference, such as like your mandate, the township resources available to this committee, like all those things. So, and through no fault of the group, they wouldn't necessarily know what township resources would be available at the
No.
time. So I guess, there would definitely need to be, amendments to the terms of reference to align with the township's committee appointment policy. So I guess if council's direction was to establish the Wingham Homecoming Committee as a committee of council, your next step would be, staff would finalize the terms of reference that would come back to council for council's review and approval. Generally, that's adopted by bylaw, and that way it establishes what the parameters are for that committee. And then, once that's approved, as the terms of reference, you use that terms of reference to go through the committee appointment process for recruitment and selection of members.
But as far as I know, they already have a whole bunch of people for different jobs. Does that work together, or can we just say, okay, they have or those people have stepped up, they can be selected for the jobs we need there, and
So,
Yeah.
so through Heifer to answer Councilor Van Henderson's question, ultimately council makes the appointments, so that's a decision of council
Okay.
of how you want to make your appointments, whether you want to, go through the whole recruitment process of the committee appointment policy, whether you want to deviate from that process. Ultimately, any appointments are ratified by council, so it's a council decision.
okay.
Thank you.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for the ladies here? Seeing none, a motion,
Sure, Reeve Heffer, I'd like to make a motion that the 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee be made a committee of council.
okay. Just leave that to Clerk Lamb here to. Then I'll have them read it and then we'll go, okay. Just let them read it out first.
So basically, your motion, based on Councilor Wright's comments there, plus next steps in the process, would read something along the lines of this. So Councilor Wright, if it's not what you're looking for, just let me know. But basically, your motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby establishes the 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee as a committee of council, and further that council directs staff to prepare a terms of reference for a 2024 Wingham Homecoming Committee of Council for council's consideration and approval.
That's all right with you?
I'm sure I said all that, yes. Thank you.
And we have a seconder, Councillor McBurney. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank
ladies.
you.
Appreciate
Do we have to
your
put this
time.
back now? Can you
Oh.
put it back? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we move on. 7, reports, and from the clerks, or the finance, the recreation, or the Public Works Facility Department. But I have 7.4.1, the Public Works 2022-29 tender results for house and dam decommissioning. I've been advised by staff that there has been an update to the recommended motion. I would ask Clerk Lamb to read in the revised recommended motion.
Thank you, Reeve Heffer. So yeah, the recommended motion of staff is amended slightly, and the reason why is because GSS Engineering has completed their review of the bids received, and they're in concurrence for for the contractor to award the work to. However, they did note a mathematical error that just slightly changes the motion. So your new motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Interim Director of Public Works and Facilities dated December 19, 2022 regarding the tender results for the decommissioning of the house and dam for information. And further, that council award the decommissioning of the house and dam to Rubus Farm Services Limited in the amount of $1,036,777.60. And further, that council authorizes the Director of Finance to make the necessary adjustments to the draft 2023 budget as outlined in report PW 2022-29.
Thank you. I have a mover. Anita, Councillor Van Hitterson, seconder, Deputy Reeve, Faulkner. Okay, I'd like at this time to ask Director Wilson if he'd come forward just to provide maybe some clarity, just talk about that, and then there can maybe be some questions from council then.
Thank you, Reeve, and through you, Reeve Hefner, I can give a brief overview of what has transpired to get us to this point now, and I think it's outlined in my report of background information dating back to motions of council, and I'll just go to the last motion that was put before council, that council directs staff to submit an application to for the decommissioning of the house and dam. That obviously the state that it's in, after doing the investigation, it has it does have liability that goes with it now, with the state that it's in, and it went to GSS Engineering, and then they did bring back their report on it, and 3 tenders were received from GSS, and as the clerk just also reiterated, that the results did come back, and the successful bidder, the lowest bidder, was Robo's Farm Services, and there was that small mathematical error, but in their comments, it's very slight, and they are still, after reviewing it, the lowest tender. And now we're at this crossroads to say that it's time for council to make their decision to accept, and then we can move forward with GSS Engineering so that they can prepare the contract for council's consideration and signing then, and move this project forward, because it is time sensitive when the work can be done. And also GS Engineering said that they need time to make sure all the applications are put out to Ministry of Natural Resources and Fisheries and Oceans, so that they can all be received back in a timely manner to proceed with the decommissioning.
Okay. Thank you. Were there any questions for Director Wilson? Go ahead, Councillor.
Just one through you, Reeve. I couldn't find much online with regards to proof of similar projects that Rubus has done. The next lowest tender, Luby, I saw that they had very relevant projects, other bridges, and actually a dam rehabilitation. So I'm just curious what similar projects Rubus presented as evidence that they're, experienced doing this work, and it won't lead to issues during the project.
I honestly can't answer that. I know that you'd have to rely on GSS Engineering, because obviously they state that they have worked with them on other projects, and they're the ones that are saying that they're quite capable of undertaking this. And I did also speak with BM Ross, a representative from BM Ross, and they also reiterated the same comment that this is something that Robos wouldn't have any problem with undertaking.
Okay, thank you. That reply. Any other questions for our director? Well, thanks for explaining that to us, Director Wilson. And at this time, we have a mover and a seconder. Sorry, I missed.
May I ask for a recorded vote, please?
Oh, okay. I'll leave it to you.
Reeve Heffer, I do have some other things to discuss before we go to vote, if that's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So through you, I wish through council we had had an opportunity to discuss this matter before now. There's two main issues, or two main topics I want to discuss through you, Reeve, before we go ahead. You know, the first one is, you know, if you look at the history of the motions for this project going back to April 21st, 2021, you know, one of the key parts of that motion was direction from the former Director of Public Works that the recommendation of the Committee of Council could not be undertaken, and the only choice was to remove the dam. So that is misleading and incorrect information. So myself and a few other concerned citizens met with the CAO and the former Director of Public Works earlier this year to try to figure out what was going, or what went wrong. And, you know, through no fault of their own, they weren't given any context or information on what the Committee of Council's recommendation was. Really, all they had to go by was the term rehabilitation, right? So if you recall back, Chant Engineering asked, you know, when they did their presentation or provided information, you know, what did they mean by rehabilitation? And they defined that as a repair of the dam, right? That's what they thought rehabilitation was. So when they said the dam can't be rehabilitated, Chant said the dam can't be repaired. Now, that was actually one of the options the Committee of Council was told to look at, right? Can the dam be repaired? Can it be replaced? Can it be removed? And I think Councillor Faulkner, who chaired the committee, will remember the Committee of Council also determined the dam cannot be repaired, right? If it was our intent to make that a motion to council to repair the dam, I mean, repair is a simple word, we just would have said it. So what did the Committee of Council mean to rehabilitate the dam? Well, what we meant is that was based on a presentation from a Mr. Peter White, who's an engineer at Brampton Mining, who proposed the idea of basically removing the bridge section and then putting a new structure over top of the dam, right? So that's what we meant by rehabilitate. So if we go back to the Chant Engineering report, what was their recommended option? Well, their recommended option actually was to revitalize the dam. And what did they mean by that? Well, what they meant was remove the bridge and put a new structure over the existing dam. So the report of the former Director of Public Works was actually completely inaccurate, right? The Chant Engineering report actually confirmed the Committee of Council's recommendation was possible. And I think we need to recall back that when the Committee of Council made the recommendation to rehabilitate the dam, that was accepted by Council, right? By a majority vote. It only changed to remove the dam when basically the former Director of Public Works said, you don't have another choice. This is your only option. So I really think we shouldn't proceed with this right now, right? I really think, to be honest, the facts seem to indicate some council members of the former session of council were misled by this recommendation. And so I don't think we should rush into this. I'd really like to pause, you know, at least for a bit, and perhaps bring forward a recommendation to reconsider this decision so that we have time to thoroughly talk about it. The other main thing I wanted to bring up was the funding proposed for this. So I see the majority of the funding is actually coming out of NOCIF fund, right? So I actually looked up on the Ontario government website, and there's three things it provides guidance that the OCIF fund can be used for: capital construction of new core infrastructure, capital maintenance for renewal, rehabilitation, or replacements of core infrastructure, or debt financing charges specifically associated with capital construction and maintenance. So it doesn't say we can use it for demolition, So I'm not sure what the implications are for using OCIF funding against, what it says you can. I assume repayment must be, may be required. But the other thing is, if it can be used for demolition, if that's an okay use for this, even though it indicates there isn't, there's all kinds of other capital projects which currently we don't have a solution to fund yet, right? And we talked about that a bit in the budget meeting, and it seems that they're more pressing. Some of them are more pressing than this one, right? So, again, we need to have follow-up budget discussions. If we lock ourselves into this right now, it's really gonna, well, we won't have any flexibility for the rest of the budget, I think, right? So, given where we are in the budget process and given where we are on the, an opportunity to reconsider the recommendation, I really don't think that we should vote in favor of issuing this tender right now. I don't know if there's a way of just deferring it. I don't know if we have to, just reject it and let staff bring forward a new motion. I'm not sure what the process is, but I really think there's a lot of issues we need to discuss before we should vote and award the tender. Thank you, Reeve.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Director Wilson if he could come back, because he told us about, sorry, go ahead, Deputy Reeve Faulkner.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I'd like to remind that the process through going over all of the reports by all the engineering that has been done over the last 40 years was presented to the council and they had ample time to go through every single one of the reports as it led up to the creation of the Committee of Council for the House and Dam and Bridge Committee. It was formed because there was not a level consensus. Everyone was going off of a different report, and it seemed to be whichever one fed into to the idea of the outcome. So we wanted to bring everybody together for a recommendation, and that recommendation was at the control of the council of the day, which took the committee's outcome, or the final report back to council very seriously, and going on their own information from the other reports to the conclusion of removing the dam structure that's there now, because it's a liability going forward. That never preceded the ability of at any time building a new one. Just that the one that's there is not repairable. It don't usually repair, refurbish. I'm going to get into that argument, but council had the full array of all the engineering. We brought all of them back in. We had all the reports back in front of us, and ultimately it was the decision of the council of the day. Now, you're fully welcome to put a motion on the table to enact any other differences from it, but right now we believe we got a second, someone making the motion and a seconder on the motion. That still has to go to a vote prior to any other motion going forward.
That's correct. Through Reeve Heffer, that's correct. So there is a motion on the floor to be voted on. Depending on the direction of that motion, would be whether any supplemental motions would be required.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just, since I asked our director to come up, I just wanted, did you have anything to add at all?
Well, I just wanted to add that, as I previously said through you, Reeve Heffer, that there is some applications that have to go through, and can take some time to get them through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Department of Fisheries and Oceans, as well as the Maitland Valley. So it is time sensitive in that matter, and these tenders that have been received do have a timeline on them, and if you don't act on them, then the price that's been quoted will be invalid after that.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Just as a further point, through you, Reeve, the issue with ever replacing a new, or taking the structure out and replacing it with a new, is that the current scope that's before council right now and was put out to tender is actually ripping out good assets, right? The north structure of the dam is it's in excellent condition, right? The middle earthen abutment, there's nothing wrong with it, right? The base of the roadways leading up to the dam, if you were gonna put a bridge structure of some respect over a new dam, are in perfectly fine shape, right? So part of my concern, and even the base dam structure, although it's not, structurally sound from a, concrete and rebar perspective, the sheer mass of it can be incorporated into a new structure, right? So the scope of replacement what that would look like is you take the bridge off, don't touch anything else, and just build a new structure over top, right? So what concerns me is the scope in which it was constructed, again, is actually removing assets which are in still good shape, right? So I'm not sure the wisdom of why we're, the liability is just with the old section of the dam, right? So if there is an intent or a hope that we can put a new dam in there, why are we ripping out good assets?
okay.
Through you, Reeve, to staff. If I'm not mistaken, we did put out for tender for that exact course of action and received nothing, received no tenders for it.
Yeah, through your Reeve. Yeah, we put out a first tender and we got no responses. So we re-tendered, and what you have in front of you is the results of the second tender.
But was the first tender to look at replacing it or just removing it?
To be honest, I'd have to go back and re-review it in terms of.
Through you, Reeve, I might be able to help. I've kind of memorized the book on this, as you can tell. But what happened was, and maybe what you're thinking about, Councillor Faulkner, is there was an engineering, they went out for an engineering proposal, an RFP, and the ask was both to look at options to remove the dam and to look at replacing the dam, provide that as well. I think perhaps what we're thinking of. So there was two responses to that. One was Chant Engineering again, replied to that RFP, and so did GSS. GSS's proposal, however, did not provide engineering services to look at replacement options. The Chant one did, but it was not accepted due to the higher cost. The GSS one was accepted because it was cheaper, but obviously it was only part of the scope. So I think, through you, Reeve, that's what you're thinking of, Councillor Faulkner. That engineering was never done in order to look at replacement options. If it was, I'm not sure it would have been the best proposals anyways, because it was also based on, remove all the assets and look at a replacement. And again, just strictly from a project scope perspective, you wouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't take out good assets and replace them with new assets. You would reuse as much as what would be possible, right?
Okay, now we have it, we already have the motion on the table, and the first and second, so we have to take this to a vote, and it was asked by Councillor Van Hitterson as a recorded vote.
Yes, please.
Yes, so I'll read back the motion. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Interim Director of Public Works and Facilities dated December 19, 2022, regarding the tender results for the decommissioning of the house and dam for information. And further, that council award the decommissioning of the house and dam to Robus Farm Services Limited in the amount of $1,036,777.60. And further, that council authorizes the Director of Finance to make the necessary adjustments to the draft 2023 budget as outlined in Report PW 2022-29. Your mover of that motion is Councillor Van Hitterson. Your seconder of that motion is Deputy Reeve Falconer. So I'll now call the recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve Falconer?
To accept the tender? Yes.
Counselor McBurney?
Yes.
Counselor Wright?
No.
Counselor Whitfield?
No.
Counselor Van Hitterson?
Yes.
And Reeve Heffer.
Yes.
So that motion carries 4-2, with the noes being Counselor Wright and Counselor Whitfield.
A procedural question. Just for my own, interest. With a counselor missing and not providing a proxy, is a non-vote a no vote?
So,
Or are we just not?
So- yeah, to clarify, so through the Reeve, to answer Deputy Falconer's question, North Huron's current procedure bylaw does not permit for proxy voting. So because Counselor Palmer is not here, it's basically as if you are a council of 6 right now. So basically a 4-2 vote means it carries and the tender's awarded. If he was here, it would be treated like you're a council of 7 again.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. So that motion's carried. Thank you. Fire Department, 7.5, nothing. Office of CAO, 7.6.1, CAO 2022-23, Community Improvement Plan, Commercial Facade Improvement Grant Application, 206 A and B of Josephine Street, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the Economic Development Officer dated December 19th, 2022, regarding the commercial facade improvement grant application received under North Huron's Community Improvement Plan for 206 A and B of Josephine Street, Wingham, and further that council hereby approves the commercial facade improvement grant application for 206 and B Josephine Street, Wingham, to the maximum amount of $10,000, and further that the clerk be directed to prepare and execute an agreement between the Township of North Huron and the applicant which outlines the terms and the conditions of the grant. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Faulkner? Councillor Whitfield? Okay, we have any questions for Officer Marcus? None noted, okay. All in favor? Carried. EM 2022-01, appointment of Community Emergency Management Coordinator and Alternative Community Emergency Management Coordinator. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the CAO dated December 19th, 2022 regarding the appointment of a Community Emergency Management Coordinator and an Alternative Community Emergency Management Coordinator for the Township of North Huron be received for information. And further, that council adopt bylaw number 117, 2022, being a bylaw appointing Chad Krager, Huron County's Emergency Management Coordinator, as the Township of North Huron's Community Emergency Management Coordinator effective September 26, 22, and Kent Redmond, North Huron Fire Chief, as the Township of North Huron's alternate Community Emergency Management Coordinator effective December 5th, 2022, respectively. Did I get a mover for that?
You need one.
Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Van Hitterson, Councillor McBurney, all in favor? Carried. EM 2022-02 Emergency Management Plan, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the CAO dated December 19th, 2022 regarding North Huron's Emergency Management Plan for information. And further, that the Council adopt bylaw number 118, 2022, being a bylaw adopting an emergency management plan for the Township of North Huron. And further, that the council repeal bylaw number 115, 217, being a bylaw to adopt an emergency management program for the Township of North Huron. Are there any questions for CAO Evans? Go ahead.
Not so much a question, but a comment. It's a very solid emergency plan. I went through it. One of the things that was on my mind, though, is just following the news on a lot of emergencies which struck other municipalities. Everyone's reliant on cell phone for connectivity and communication, and that seems to get knocked out along with everything else in an emergency. So just something to think about is to try to have backup systems and not rely on cell service, so that you can have, at least communications between here and Blythe and, other essential locations if an emergency management center ever gets set up.
We sort of discussed that at that thing.
Yeah, the program.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have and through the REIV, just in terms of, it's a very valid point, and it is something, so we have an emergency management program committee that is comprised of some senior staff as well as the REIV and deputy REIV. And at the time, in fairness, the deputy REIV was not yet chosen, but the REIV was part of that conversation, and it is something that was flagged. So it's a very valid point, and it is something that we'll look at and come up with an alternative. For sure.
Yeah, that came up pretty strongly there too, just as you're saying, Councillor Wright. So I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Whitfield, Councillor McBurney, all in favor? Carried. 8.1, Municipality of Morris Turnberry, letter of the Belgrave Water System that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives a letter from the Municipality of Morris Turnberry dated December 15th, 2022 regarding the Belgrave Water System for information purposes, and further that the CAO be directed to prepare a follow-up report to the council regarding the matter. Were there any questions for our CAO? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Is it normal that contracts that are due in 2025 come up now already, like 2 or 3 years in advance? And is there a reason for it that you are aware of?
Through your REIV, in terms of, I can't speak to the reason for it, but often agreements will have a minimum termination notice,
Yeah.
And as long as the minimum requirements are met. So in this case, the minimum is a year. They've given more than a year's notice, so that's certainly possible to do that. So again, in terms of the reason for it, hence that's, from a staff's perspective, a recommendation in terms of a follow-up report. I think it'd be beneficial for council. There is a lot of history regarding that system. The ministry was involved at the time, so I think we have to have the full everything in front of you to enable you to make a decision in terms of how you want to proceed.
Deputy Reeve Faulkner?
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. Reading through this 3 or 4 times and kind of putting them in mind through the processes and where we at with our own cross-border. The Belgrave system is a complete user pay. It does not require any funding from the municipality. It is directly billed to the homeowners in East Womash. Thus, all the infrastructure, I don't believe in the agreement that there's any money having to be paid for upgrading systems. Much the same as the agreements that we already have. From what I read in this is just merely a request to align the 2 anniversary dates of anything going forward of our other cross-border with Blythe and with the Wingham Ward. That's all it really boils down to, because there's the only request that they would have to make would be to their own users, so, or like their own customers. So it really isn't asking us to do anything other than align the anniversary dates of the agreement. As long as they're they're willing to, when including that into the bargaining, that it's not for other reasons other than to aligning the contract. I'll go for it.
Councillor Wright?
Just as information, I was wondering what the next steps were on that cross-bordering service agreement. I assume maybe we're just focusing on budgeting and stuff now, and then that'll become a priority after that, but just curious what the next step is in that process, because as I understand, well, as I recall from election night, that has been signed and sent, but we haven't heard anything back. So I'm just curious if the intent is to reach out to Morris Turnberry and find out, if they want to set up a meeting or just what the next step is.
I'd expect with what it says here and further that the CEO will be directed to prepare a follow-up report. I imagine that should be all covered in there, I'd expect, right, Mr. Evans?
Yeah, through your Reeve, in terms of certainly in the new year, we'll need to I'll bring back a report regarding the status of the cross-border agreement, and in terms of seeking council direction as to how you wish to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
So are there any other questions at all for this? Okay, I need a mover and a seconder. May I? Councillor Wright, Councillor McBurney, all in favor? Carried. Council reports. Reeve activity report. It's pretty quiet. We're just coming up to our first meeting coming up this week on Wednesday with the county, and it's been quiet. There's been the odd thing to go to. Went to our Julie Ireland was asked to go up and make a presentation to 80 grade 8 students of planning, and they had real good questions for her, and they even had super answers too. It was a good afternoon, well spent, I think, and she did an excellent job of keeping the kids in tune to what was going on, and it was a real good afternoon. Okay, councillor members' reports, verbal or written? None. It's pretty early yet, isn't it? All of a sudden, it's going to change. Comments by members? Go ahead.
Through you, Reeve. I was excited and glad to see the motion come through for the CHIP program for a facade in Wingham and awarding the $10,000 towards that project. I hope that spurs on others to. I'm not sure why it hasn't gone gangbusters as we had hoped for facades. That there is money available to other businesses that are on or watching on the camera today. That I highly recommend that they reach out and use up this program. It's underutilized, but I'm happy to see that finally the first thing of council is to put one through for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other updates at all? Just want to bring up about the dinner that was put on down at the complex. Just appreciate all the volunteers that go on in this community. Is really, really something to see. That really well appreciated. Okay, bylaws. Bylaw 112, 2022, appointment of an alternate to the County of Huron Council. May I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Van Hitterson, Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 113, 2022, appointment to boards and committees for 22 to 2026. May I have a mover? Councillor McBurney, followed by Mr. Wright, Councillor Wright, and all in favor? Carried.
A question on that, Reeve, if I may. Do we need to name a council representative to the Homecoming Committee of Council?
Through Reeve Heffer to answer Councillor Wright's question. So we will bring back the terms of reference for council's consideration. That will stipulate whether one of the members of that composition is a council representative. So then once we get that direction and council adopts that terms of reference, that'll dictate next steps of whether one needs to be appointed or not.
Okay, so through you, Reeve, just so you know, I am interested in being on that committee, and I've spoken to the two representatives and let them know. So if you want to take that into consideration when you draft the terms of reference, I'm willing to step forward and be that liaison.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. That's been noted. Bylaw number 11422, I did it.
That's what you're on now.
Okay, appointment of Court of Revision. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Faulkner, Counselor Whitfield. All in favor? Passes. Carried. Bylaw number 115, 2022, appointment of Committee of Adjustment. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Counselor Van Hitterson, Counselor McBurney. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 116, 2022, appointment of Property Standards Committee. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Counselor Van Hitterson, Counselor Whitfield. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 117, 2022, appointment of CEMC and alternate CEMC. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Reeve Faulkner, Counselor McBurney, all in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 118, 2022, adoption of North Huron Emergency Management Plan. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Counselor Wright, Counselor Van Hitterson, all in favor? Carried. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, January 16th, 2023, at 6 p.m. in the North Huron Town Hall's Theater. And the next budget meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 2nd, 2023.
That should be January 12th.
Oh, sorry, it is January 12th, 2023, at 9 a.m. in the Town Hall Theater here. Other business. Seeing none, closed session and reporting out that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby proceeds at
6:57 p.m.
6:57 p.m. to an in-camera session closed to the public under Section 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act to discuss the following: a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And further, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby proceeds to an in-camera session closed to the public under Section 239(3.1) of the Municipal Act for the purposes of an education and training session on the following subject matters: land use planning, education and training session, an in-depth review of the purpose of different types of planning applications and the related planning procedures. And further, that CAO Evans it stays in item 1 and 2, Clerk Lamb, item 1 and 2, Economic Development Officer Marcus in item 1, and Planner Holman stays and remains in item 2. May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Van Hitterson, Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried.